Hollow Knight on Steam Deck. So Silksong is coming out in a couple of days, so I wanted to check the original game. I had it for a while and I never actually played it. Shame on me. But it's verified, obviously. It's a 2D game, but not always that means good performance. Looking at you, Rogue Prince of Persia. It has a Linux version, but Valve by default puts it on Proton 9.0. Apparently there are some weird issues sometimes with the Linux version, so keep that in mind, especially to keep the same saves as on Windows. But as you can probably notice, if you are into the game, there are black bars at the top and bottom of the screen, which again, you might say, oh, that's not a big deal. Yeah, but there's a mod that you can download that uses the entire screen, so I'm going to show you that in a second. Let's go. And I want to thank Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Instant Gaming is a website where you'll find cheaper games for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch with 24/7 support. You can find the latest games like Hell Is Us, the deluxe edition with early access for $51.74, or games that I highly recommend like Hollow Knight, $13.57 US, Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate, great game for Steam Deck, Hogwarts Legacy for only $13.92, and Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut. And due to this partnership, we're giving away one game to one of you guys each month, a game of your choice on Instant Gaming if you win. So thanks again to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let's continue. Alright, so once you're in desktop mode, first of all, door face the third. Thank you for the guide. We gotta do what he says, so let's download this app from the Discover Store. And now we need to find a file into Hollow Knight's folder. So go into your Steam library. In Hollow Knight, make sure to go to the cog, manage, browse local files. And this will open the Hollow Knight folder. Go into Hollow Knight data, managed, and make sure you can find this assembly c#.dll. So here we go, and copy the location. After doing that, open this again and hit open. And in here you can paste what you just copied. And once you do so, you'll see something weird like this. And you need to use find. Once you open find, I highly recommend you either minimize the software and keep this window up, 398E, E3, 3F, and hit find, and you can find it right here. So what you do with these numbers, keep them there. You need to override it with this other number, so hit copy. Make sure to paint over this exactly like how I'm showing you here. Control V, that's perfect. Hit save, then find again. You already have this number, hit find. They are here this time, so we paint over them like this. Control V, save, find again. It's like there's like 5 instances of this. Again, Control V, perfect. Let's find the next one. Here we go again. Control V, find next. Here's another one. Save. And that's it. Once you cannot find more values, you should be good to go. Save and open the game. Alright, so after doing that and saving that progress, go back into gaming mode and we have the entire screen. Looks fantastic. I highly recommend you do this. If it's too much of a pain and you wanted to just copy and paste, I left a copy of the DLL file in the description. So if you're playing at 60 FPS, it's not really a problem at all. Let me show you unlock frame rate super quick. So with an unlock frame rate, we're CPU limited. I mean, we get a stupid amount of FPS, so this game is not hard to run. So my focus for this video was not if the game works, it's how to make it look the best and the battery to be the longest. So let's swap into handheld mode and see what it looks like. Alright, so welcome to handheld mode. Why do I think this is important? Well, just to see battery life, basically. We're at 800p with the widescreen, well, the 16:10 fix. High blur, normal particles, doesn't go higher than normal. FPS cap, let's disable that. We have the one from Steam. And here we go. On the Steam Deck OLED is 90 FPS. and we're using less than half the GPU. And again, I never played this game before, so I don't know much about it, but with an unlocked frame rate, it's completely fine. With unlocked frame rates, it actually gets to 300 FPS. And it actually looks great, especially on the OLED panel. Those dark... Yeah, there's a lot of darkness when it comes to the color palette. So that's perfect for the Steam Deck. And at least the OLED version. On the LCD, expect the same performance. This is not a demanding game. And I expect Silksong to be maybe a bit more demanding, but not by a lot, probably. Oops. Destruction. So with the settings that you see here, we're basically 5.5 hours of battery. Would I go any lower than this? Well, you can limit the wattage of the CPU. The problem with that is that if you go very low when it comes to the wattage, the game, when you're getting particle effects on screen, that there will be more later on, you're going to have inconsistent frame times. So that will be an issue on a game that has so much focus on combat and platforming. So my advice, at least for 90 Hz on the OLED Steam Deck, is to keep it as is. It uses like 10 watts, including the screen and all that. So you have easily 5 hours of battery with a full charge. And the game is super smooth. If you're not sensitive to different frame rates, maybe you want to play at 60 Hz for even more battery, if you're interested in that sort of thing. But the game is completely stable. It works completely fine, as expected. My only gripe with it is that it doesn't natively support 16:10. You have to use that mod, but again, I left a link in the description if you don't want to do all that hex editing stuff, which is pretty simple, but most people don't want to go through that effort. I wish it was plug and play. But at 16:10, I mean, yeah, we don't have black bars, which might not sound like a big deal, but having the entire screen makes a complete difference. You paid for the entire screen, use the entire screen. I hope Silksong doesn't need a fix like this. And this is a Unity title. I've been developing on Unity for VR stuff, mostly. And yep, the fact that they made it run so well, I wouldn't say for most people will be impressive. And for someone like me that actually does stuff in Unity, despite being 2D, it runs way better than I expected. Again, there's no guarantees of a game running well, even if it's 2D. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, I hope that Silksong is probably going to run very similar to this. Maybe a bit worse, but that's because they probably will have lots more stuff going on. At least that's my expectation for my new game. So again, 5 hours of battery at 90 Hz. What about 60 Hz? So for 60 FPS, you might not notice a huge difference when it comes to battery life, at least not on default settings. So in that case, my advice is to go to the TDP limit and limit it to maybe, let me see, if I put it at 4 watts, it kills the performance. At 5 watts, it's a bit better, but we need some room to spare still. 6 watts, maybe makes more sense. There we go. Yeah, 6 watts should do it. So we're at 6 watts. On a full charge, instead of 5 and something hours, you get 6 on the OLED Steam Deck. If you're on the LCD, expect a bit less battery life. Maybe with these settings, something like 4 hours, I'd say, if your battery is still at 100% health after all this time. So with 90 FPS, you get something like 5 and something hours. And with 60 Hz locked to 6-7 watts, you get 6 hours. So great battery life, at least in my opinion. So again, why am I leaving room to spare when it comes to wattage? Well, as you can probably notice, when particle effects, those simple effects show up, you actually get a spike in GPU usage, because those effects actually use more graphics card. And again, in order to get a good buffer for our frame rate to not drop below 60 and have stutters, a bit more of room to spare when it comes to the performance is good to have, because yeah, we're using 28% GPU, but as soon as a good amount of effects show up, it's going to spike to maybe 60%. Again, it's for a split second, But despite that being a split second, it can be the difference when doing a boss fight or something like that that requires timing. So yeah, I think it's a great looking game. You can run it at, again, 90 Hz, completely fine, with just don't limit the TDP and you should be okay. But yeah, I think this runs way better than I expected, honestly, despite being a 2D game. Again, sometimes that's not a guarantee that you have good performance. Let me see if I can make them break this door. Apparently not. That's fine. But at the end of the day, with 90 Hz, you get 5 and something hours of battery on the OLED. 60 Hz gives you an extra hour of battery, which is great. Just limit a TDP to 6 watts to have room to spare, just in case. You never know. I think the OLED screen does a great job highlighting how good this game looks. When it comes to art, there's a lot of dark tones that on the OLED screen really pop, when it comes to color at least. And in a couple days I'll be playing Silksong on this same system, and we'll see if we can get actual 16:10 without modding, so the entire screen. I'm talking about battery life and performance because this runs fantastically well. So I think it's a great way to check it out. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you ever played this game before. I'm interested. I haven't played it personally. I had it in my library for a while, but I need an excuse to make a video about it, I guess. And it looks pretty interesting, but I need to play it seriously. Right now I'm just doing some testing, so thank you for watching, and I'll see ya next time. Bye guys!